Welcome to the bold analysis, ladies and gentlemen. Uhuru Kenyatta is very hungry, former president of Republic of Kenya. This is because of Nairobi peace talks that had been going on in the country for the last 1 week, nearly collapsed on Monday. After rebel groups walks out of that meeting, complaining that the organizers had not paid them their allowances and other personal bills and even compensation, and they had not been sorted. And former president, who is the facilitator of those peace talks, was really pissed off and did not mince his words. The peace talks, I think the peace mission where Uhuru Kenyatta, former president, is heading, was not a role that he was given by this administration or by Kenyans, but he was picked by the East African community. And of course, that will be influenced by a number of issues. Remember himself, he was the former immediate chairman of the East African community. So he also played a key role or a lead role in integrating DRC into the East African bloc. So Uhuru came out to say that he's going to, if the matter is not going to be addressed, he's going to spill the beans and even expose to the world those who are responsible for the mess, calling on the situation to be held. And Uhuru spoke very angry.
Mimi nataka niseme hivi, kwa sababu nia yangu mimi ni tumalize mkutano vyema. Na mimi najua ya kwamba pia nia yenu ni tumalize mkutano vyema. Si ni kweli? Kwa hivyo mimi ningependa tuahirishe mkutano leo, turudi hapa kesho, na mimi niwapatie hakikisho ya kwamba wenzetu ambao sitaki niwataje kwa sababu ni wetu na wanajijua, wenzetu ambao walikuwa wanastahili kupanga huu mkutano, tunajua ya kwamba tuko na fedha za kutosha, kwa sababu mimi mwenyewe nilikuwa kati ya wale ambao walikuwa wanatafuta hizo fedha, na hizo fedha sio zao, ni za kusaidia kuleta amani kwa Kongo. Tunaelewana wenzangu? Na mimi mwenyewe nataka niwahakikishie kesho mtakuja. Kwanza tumalizane na hizo shida zenu za kibinafsi ambazo mko nazo. Si ndio? Ndio sasa tuingie kazi ile ambayo imetulete na tuweze kufunga kikao hii kwa njia ambayo inastahili. Tunaelewana wenzangu? Tunaelewana? Na wale ambao wanahusika, msifikirie ya kwamba amani ni kitu ya kucheza naye. Amani sio kitu ya kucheza naye. Wawe hapa, na kama hawatafaulu, mimi sina shida kusimama na kuambia dunia mzima ya kwamba msiwapatie hawa watu pesa tena kama hawawezi kupanga vikao na kutusaidia kwa njia ile ambayo inastahili. Tunaelewana wenzangu? Tumekubaliana wenzangu? Tukutane hapa kesho saa 4.
If you watch that clip, you will realize that President Uhuru Kenyatta was speaking very angry. And just to echo his words, it will be so wrong to someone, even if we are in a corrupt society where we've normalized corruption. We've seen cases being dropped one after the other. But on this one, being that it's even at an international stage, I don't think we should wash our dirty linen. in public. If from the tone of President Uhuru Kenyatta, there are some few projections that you can make. He's saying that he's going to expose organizers to their bosses. And for him to come out to speak publicly that way, I don't want to reason. It's not really, it's unlikely that he's talking about people from other parts, from other countries. Like these organizers are maybe president of Uganda, Tanzania. No, I don't think. This would be a secretariat or a team that is locally in Kenya. And those funds could have been, it's being managed here, locally. But of course, because this would, President Uhuru Kenyatta is a guarantor of the East African Trust. And is actually DRC guarantor in the East African community. And when DRC came through, he was the chairman. 6 billion was received, I think less than 1 week, from a U.S. family foundation known as Howard G. Buffett. And they offered that support on December 12th for office of this special envoy to help in this process and even repatriation of the refugees back in DRC. So in terms of funding, it is true from what we've gathered that money is there. Because if this money came just a few days ago, then could it also that we are talking about this money? The question that I'm also wondering is this, former President Uhuru Kenyatta is speaking about Nairobi 1, Nairobi 2. And if those ones weren't successful, why is this one becoming a problem? Can you, what are some of, how can you relate it? What can you relate it with? I also want to acknowledge that this peace talks of DRC has been very sensitive and controversial to some sense because we've seen President Kagame, Rwandan president, even opposing the Nairobi process, saying that it's inclusive and it's going to solve the problem halfway, taking an issue with the fact that world critics have been using Rwanda as the scapegoat. He is actually saying because the M23 rebels that are operating within the Goma area had been receiving some support from Rwanda, according to some reports. And that's what Kagame, that is not what has not been comfortable with Kagame. And seems to be coming out to speak. Just get a bit of his speech. I think he spoke when he was speaking in Parliament in Rwanda.
Those who think they can keep cutting our banana leaves because we are short stems, boy, you don't know how much you have deceived yourselves. They even say we are accused of stealing the wealth, the minerals of Congo. One thing we are not, and that's what makes us what I've just said. We are not thieves. We work for what we have and what we get. We are not going to violate anybody's sovereignty or territorial integrity. Will be respected, but we so much demand that that happens in our case as well. So people along the border.
So can you draw, is it something because at the international stage or locally? Because what do you think could be at the center of it? The only guess I can make around that I've been making is the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, who was initially seen as the one now trying to convince Raila against pushing Ruto's government, seems to have made a U-turn. And maybe elements within this administration might feel like he's still active in politics. But I just want to make a bit, I want to narrow it to what himself, President, is saying. That he will put the organizers to task. And with that, let's advance some theories around it. The organization that, the organizers of that event, because he has not mentioned whether it's a foundation or organization or maybe the ESC, are junior to President Uhuru Kenyatta, and likely they're within the country. That's why he's saying maybe they are feeling that now he doesn't have the power. They're feeling that he's powerless. And if it is within here, who is actually coordinating? Is it the Ministry of East African Community? Or it is the East African Community Secretariat here in the country? But I see a possibility that some powerful elements might have choreographed a collapse of these peace talks locally here so that it can dent the credentials of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Because Uhuru Kenyatta was gaining mileage at the global stage. And with these peace talks not being through, it also even serves him himself a big blow. So could be that some fellas within are also feeling, oh, this is not what we want him to do. Picking from what has been happening, the peace talks, or rather the Nairobi peace process, seem also to have been infiltrated by an enemy, maybe serving global interests. President Kagame is a very powerful figure in East Africa. I think it's only Kenya leading it. Is it that the other East African countries are comfortable with it? There are all questions in the fold. And so there is a possibility that the process infiltrated, and it has nothing to do with the fact that it has nothing to do with the exclusive the issue of the funds. But people are just settling their own political scores. This, to me, sets up a stage of a fallout between President Ruto or between President Uhuru Kenyatta and the organizers. But the tragedy will be if the organizers are people within this administration. And we're waiting to see. Because from the way Uhuru Kenyatta is speaking, it seems that he might even give up in it. Is that the ambition? Let's wait and see.